I feel a bit of a fraud. I'm not going to talk about augmented reality. I'm going to talk about sort of improving experiences in real environments, but I am going to talk about some emerging technology and within a conceptual framework of gamification. We're calling this Game of Towns. We had, when we were booked to do this speech, me and my co-author, Ben Keegan, it was a pipe dream. We've since heard, like 10 days ago, we've got £1 million of funding to actually develop this. So we thought the first thing we'll do is we'll have a better name. So you can ignore what's in the title. This is now the Game of Towns. So what we're trying to do is use the sort of concepts of gamification to try and improve customer experience in places. Anyone that's had to travel through Manchester recently will know that whilst there's lots of attractions on offer in Manchester, fantastic retail and museums and so on, some basic things like the roads sort of falling down sinkholes, things like that sort of happen all over the place and actually, detract from our overall experience. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the rules of the old game to begin with, in terms of how towns thought they were competing against each other and how that means, what they've been sort of spending their money on and worrying about. The old game really is based on quite a lot, based on the retail hierarchy. So here it's sort of saying the big retailers, the number of retailers that you've got makes you important as a location, and that sort of puts you in a list of where you are in terms of a place. So, looking at the rules of that game, obviously if you want to get higher in the hierarchy, you need to attract more retailers. But the game was really bent. The rules weren't really quite fair because it wasn't any sort of retailer, it was multiple retailers. So you could only get higher up in the retailer hierarchy if you got, the big boys in. And that was a problem. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about that later on. And it has detracted from the customer's experience. The other thing is, when everyone's in the same hierarchy, everyone is a baddie if you're a town. You're competing against every other town, and that's not really true. Okay, Altrincham doesn't really compete with Manchester in terms of its offer. So there's been some winners and losers from this old game. If we look at how fragmented the retail landscape was in 1971, so it's 70% of retail sales generated by just under 30,000 retailers. So lots and lots of smaller independent players in this game. Fast forward to 2004, the same amount of retail sales generated by just 100 retailers. So you start to see how the rules of the game, have really affected the UK landscape in terms of retailing, and that has a big impact on our places. So there's a busy high street. You can say that, surely that's a good thing. We've got all these successful multiple retailers, but what that means is many of our places look the same. So if you're trying to improve a customer experience, improve a visitor experience in a location, it's quite difficult to do that often with your retail offer, because you've got the same retail offer as everywhere else. And as soon as the multiple retailers find sort of more efficient ways of operating, that's move from town centre and real world locations into e-commerce. Obviously that just means empty spaces, empty retail space. So we think it's time for a new game. And some of these things that I'm saying are sort of backed up really in terms of consumer behaviour, because we are the most fierce internet shoppers in the world, in the UK. And I think one of the reasons for that is that we've actually had quite a poor real world experience. So why not go online? Why go to an out of town or go down to a high street where everything looks the same? You're going to get fairly, maybe low levels of customer service. You're not going to have anything particularly innovative given to you. You might as well shop online. So what we've been doing is working with a company called Springboard, who are our partners in this big project that we've now won. And we've been looking at footfall in around about 150 UK locations, and some of that we've been able to track over the last 10 years. Now the type of technology that Springboard use are infrared cameras, and they have this technology in a lot of the major town city centres. So they're tracking footfall 24/7 around locations. So it's really, really useful data for us to see how towns are changing. And before we did this research, again, the retail hierarchy just sort of assumes there's just one type of footfall pattern. And that was one of a comparison retailing town. That's something like Manchester. And you can tell it's dominated by its comparison retail offer, its clothing and those sorts of types of retail, because you see these huge peaks coming up to Christmas, and everybody goes out and buys all their Christmas shopping. And so really everyone was thinking that that's how you won. That was the only town that you could win being. We found different footfall patterns, speciality footfall pattern where you see a rise after Easter and another peak just before Christmas again, but a smaller one, something like Chester, which has got a mix of attractions, bringing people in for lots of different reasons. We also found these more community or convenience centres, somewhere like Altrincham. But when you look at this pattern, if you looked at it daily, you'd see something like Altrincham that's got its successful market now, has really different peaks during the week. So although that looks quite flat, it's very, very energetic if it's a really good community or convenience town. Now, we found with our footfall data that towns that have a clear signature like this are performing well. They're not losing footfall to the internet. It's all the other towns that don't have a clear signature. Because what that's saying really is it's not clear what the offer is to the consumer. So, this is the future, we think. The principle for the new game of towns. This is the Arndale Centre. It's a bit blurry. Anyone want to hazard a guess which Arndale Centre in the UK this is? Any idea? Any clues in that picture? Not really. No, I really would have to get my purse out and give some prize money if someone had got it. And one of the things about Arndales and other shopping centres, they all look the same. So, I didn't show you one of the other types of towns that we found, which was a seaside town, and that's the graph of footfall in a seaside town. It goes right up in the summer and then right down again. And this is actually in Morecambe, so maybe there is some clues in the architecture there. So this is Morecambe, Arndale Centre, but although somewhere like Morecambe attracts about 6 times as much footfall as you'd expect over the summer months for the type of retail offer it has, it's nothing to do with the retail offer that's attracting the people in the summer months. What is it? It's the seaside, absolutely. And what we're saying is, if we want to attract people to physical locations, then we need the operators in those locations to have a more collaborative and congruent offer. Okay, we should be seeing something that looks more seasidey when we go to a seaside town. Now, the new owners of the Arndale Centre, who are also in our project, New River Retailing, having asked Wayne Hemingway to give this a complete makeover and make it an Art Deco theme that's more in fitting with the rest of the architecture and the whole regeneration programme in that location. And what we think the towns need to think about, rather than competing with each other, is really understanding what their assets are and how they can collaborate better to make the most of what they've got, rather than spending so much money trying to be something that they're never going to be. So this is the product that we're now going to spend 2 years developing. It's called the Footfall Optimizer. We'll have different interfaces for different types of operators. The retailers will have an interface, towns will have an interface, retail property people, investors will also have an interface, so that we really, for the first time, share dynamically what's happening around the UK, so that operators can make the right location decisions based on not only the offer that they've got, but the sort of things that those towns think they need. In our last project, we had a public work, we worked with 10 towns in the UK, and one of our towns was Morley. And in the public workshop that we ran there, people said, unequivocally, the only thing that Morley needed was a good coffee shop. But they couldn't attract Starbucks or Costa or any of the brands that they thought would offer a sort of reliable service in that location. Because they didn't look like they had the right demographic. It becomes a chicken and egg scenario. Retailers choosing to locate in areas where they think they're successful, won't locate in areas where they don't have data, even though they could well be successful in those areas. So you are the first people to hear about this new project. If you want to find out more, I've done a tutorial there for the title of the talk. We're very interested in working with other locations. We've already got 7 involved in the project, but if you want to find out more about the project, please do get in touch. Thank you very much.